How's it going, everybody? Seth from the Headwaters channel here. So earlier this week, we posted a walkthrough of the Swell Scupper 14 and Scupper 12 from Swell Watercraft. Today, I'm going to be taking them out on the water to do an actual on-water review myself and kind of give some honest opinions there about how I feel about these kayaks. But before I do that, earlier this week on the last videos, we had some comments asking a few questions about the boat, primarily pertaining to the comfort of it. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of those questions real quick because they were totally valid. So the first question we had was asking if your legs rub a lot on the edges of the cockpit here, which is actually a really good question because when I was out paddling, I was wearing a dry suit with some pretty thick layers under it. It's actually quite cold out still. Here we are, we're in the cockpit, and I gotta say, let's see, I mean, they've done a pretty good job. The plastic inside, like where your legs are actually gonna make contact, is quite smooth. And then on the top of the gunnel here, it's textured, and that, I believe, is to help it kind of grip when it's mounted on a roof rack, which is nice. It's not bothering me, I would say, like if I was paddling, right? Even if my legs were rubbing a bunch, which I'm kind of exaggerating the movement of my legs at this point, I can feel it rub a little bit. It would be really easy to slap some adhesive like closed cell foam or something right there to kind of absorb that movement. But I think it really depends on the person. If you have like really sensitive skin, I could see it being an irritant. I don't think it would bother me that much. I'm used to paddling narrow kayaks and kind of having that contact. And once again, I'll mention this in the video, but in a kayak like this that's meant to be performance oriented, where you're meant to brace and lean into the secondary stability to steer and so on, having that contact with your shins and basically as many contact points as possible is really important. The other major question seemed to be about the seat. A lot of people saying it didn't look very comfortable. The seat also kind of applies to that performance-oriented kayak. I think with sit-on tops, the market is very full of really big frame seats and so on, and they're super comfortable feeling. So when you're paddling in more aggressive water, let's say like sea kayaking or choppy weather or big lakes, and you're really digging in with your paddle, right? You're getting in there. What's happening? You're moving all the way through your torso. You're getting a lot of movement back here. And so in that scenario, first of all, if you want to actually lean back and kind of brace as you're turning and kind of rudder, a big frame seat it's actually gonna get in the way, right? You're gonna have this metal that doesn't flex with you that's kind of in the way. In a performance-oriented, really aggressive paddling kayak like this, you have these smaller seats to allow you that freedom. I kind of like to look at it as like bicycle seats. If you look at like a very recreational, chill bicycle that's just meant for kind of cruising around the neighborhood, they usually have those like big, fluffy, padded seats that are meant to like be really cozy feeling. But if you look at like a race bike, right, a lot of them have these really teeny tiny seats that look really uncomfortable, and they're just suited for that performance, right? Like over the long haul, that smaller seat is actually going to be a lot more comfortable, a lot less abrasive than that much bigger seat is. It's a boat that is, I think, suited to a much more specific audience than your general sit-on-top kayak is, and it has some things that are suited exactly to that aspect. And in this case, this Scupper 14 in particular is meant to go fast. It's meant to be a performance boat. It's built, with the lower center of gravity and being narrower. Everything about it is meant to go faster. And so the seat and the having your legs down in the cockpit and having all those contact points are just part of that equation.
All right, we're out here at the neighborhood pond. We got the Scupper 12, we got the Scupper 14. We're taking for a rip. I'm really excited about both of these boats. So, full disclosure, I have paddled the Scupper 14 before, and I liked it a lot. It really impressed me. Like we mentioned earlier, it's kind of a unique design, right? With that low center of gravity, narrow boat, still stable, still fast. Scupper 12 is brand new, so I've never been in one. So we'll take the 14 for a rip first, see how it feels. We'll hop in the 12, kind of compare the two. A nice little launch there. You got a little deep water launch, kind of giving you an idea of how that might go if you're in a place that doesn't have an easy launch spot. But as you kind of saw there, the way you want to do that in a narrow sit on top like this is kind of throw your legs over. And that gives you a little more balance, right? You just get in here. And you'll see if you watch guys who are like in surf skis or who are fishing like really narrow fishing kayaks, you'll see when they're doing stuff in front of the boat, they've got their legs over. It just gives you so much control. And then having your paddle here so you can kind of brace Yeah, helps a lot. Anyway, here we go. So, like I said, I've been in this boat before. I really enjoy it. Only paddled them once, but just really, I would say, when you paddle a narrow kayak, obviously you have some expectations, and there are certainly some out there that I've been a little disappointed in. And I think the first time I paddled the Swell Scupper 14, that was maybe the first time that I paddled one of these, and it did pretty much exactly what I expected, in a good way. It accelerates really well. It turns better than you think it would. 14 feet, you're at that point where, you know, speed and tracking are usually your goal. So going fast in a straight line, and maneuverability kind of takes a back seat. And it's rare that you'll find a boat that long that maneuvers pretty well. But because of, like how Jim was talking about earlier, the way that there's not a ton of initial stability, but primarily it's secondary stability, it allows you to lean almost like you would like a sea kayak and really work these turns and just get on edge and make pretty quick maneuvers that you wouldn't be able to do in a lot of other sit-on tops. Because a lot of other sit-on tops basically are made to have a ton of primary stability and not really made to get on edge like that. So, you know, this is definitely what I would call a paddler's kayak, where if you're a person who wants to learn the kayaking aspect of the sport, if you're a person who maybe is a kayak angler who fishes in the ocean and wants something performance oriented, and you know you're gonna learn how to surf and you're gonna learn how to launch and you're gonna learn how to edge and brace, you know, this is what I would say is a really good boat for you. Because yeah, I mean, more so than any other sit on top I've ever paddled, this is very reminiscent of being almost in a sea kayak and having that ability to control just the engagement that you have by being so low in the boat. I've got a little engagement in my hips, which you would typically have on a sit inside. I've got engagement in my thighs. I've got engagement right here in my shins. And then of course I've got my feet. And I've never felt so connected to a sit on top before, which I really enjoy. And now, let me see if we can go kind of fast. We'll get up to speed. Ripping. This is actually, I'm gonna call this like moderate effort. I am not really working it right now. Let's lay it down and see what we can do. Yeah, it really gets moving. I'm certainly interested in, especially for ocean kayak fishing. This is one of my top choices. I'm in a Target 140 right now, but you know, the additional engagement you get, the additional stability you get from being lower in the cockpit. I also have really gnarly lower back problems, so I can really feel, you know, the difference with that little change in depth from the seat height to the feet. Normally, it doesn't take very long for my back to start getting irritated when I'm going to sit on top. This actually is quite comfy, so definitely liking it. All right, so Scupper 12, here we go. First strokes. Initial impression. Feels, because of the width, more friendly in the cockpit, more stable initially. Once again, just having a little more space around me here. This feels definitely, you know, more recreational friendly, less intense. Definitely, you know, it's tracking really well for a 12-foot kayak. It does have noticeably more play in the bows. I'm taking these strokes, I'm looking straight off the bow and watching it, you know, just not track quite as well, but it's still great. You know, these are all the performance differences that one would expect with the difference in specifications between these two. Something nice that I wasn't super expecting is it accelerates really well. It just took off, you You know, I started paddling, and it's cruising really comfortably. It's just really easy stroke to stroke. It seems to be carrying speed pretty well. I'll actually stop paddling for a second here and see. Yeah, we're still cruising along. I got a little wake coming off the bow. And I bet this thing is going to be wicked easy to maneuver. So instead of doing the advanced, you know, bracing and stuff, we're just going to do a quick backstroke. Oh yeah, that turns 2 strokes full 180 basically. And that is not a thing you can do in the 14. But once again, to be expected with the 2-foot difference between these boats. Oh man, you can get way on edge in this thing. That's really fun. That's cool. Have a boat this wide that you can just really get over there. And the edge to edge, you know, your transition from edge to edge, doink, right over, because you don't have, you know, when you're doing this, you have a ton of primary stability. This is definitely an all-around little kayak. Probably not my first choice for the ocean, and not built for that, but pretty much any kind of flat water. This feels really good for like mild river floats too. Having something that maneuvers as well, that's big. So if you're just floating down a river and there's some kind of obstruction up in front of you, you know, being able to adjust your course really quickly is super important. And yeah, easy to do that in this thing. Once again, a big differentiator is feeling so engaged with the boat. I think this is kind of a middle ground. There are a lot of people who don't want to be in a sit inside because you kind of feel trapped, right? You have a boat over you and you're just like, you're in there, and it can be scary if you capsize to escape from that. There are people who don't want a full sit on top, right? Because you're out of the boat. You don't feel connected to the boat at all. You could just, and a lot of them you feel like you could just lean over and fall right out. And this is like right in the middle. You're not trapped by the boat, but you're touching it. You have all this contact throughout. It gives you this feeling of security. And at the same time, you don't feel like you're just gonna flop right out of the boat, right? So it's cool. What's the diagnosis? What's the comparison? 14-footer, the paddler's kayak. If you like to go pretty fast and you like a boat that you're engaged with, that you interact with, let's say you're paddling a sit inside that's kind of long like that, you like that feeling, but you want more open, you want more access to things on the deck, or you want to maybe do a little bit of fishing and you don't want to be in a sit inside. 14's a killer option. If you're on a sit on top and you want something that's more performance oriented, that you really can get moving in, that's gonna, you know, make you do a little more active paddling, 14 foot. If you want to go out in the ocean, absolutely great for that. 12-footer, you know, it is so much more beginner friendly. I'm actually kind of astonished. I was expecting these two to be more similar, kind of based off of the design similarities, but they feel very different. This feels very forgiving. Some of that might be coming from the 14-foot first, that was very narrow and required a lot of that, you know, attention to what I'm doing with my body, what I'm doing with my paddle. But this feels very throw and go. Like I could just hop in here any day, go for a nice relaxed cruise, have a good time. The biggest thing here is just that Swell with these two designs is bringing your connection to the kayak back into sit on tops. So, you know, when I say that, I mean, for the longest time with sit insides, people were paddling very connected to the boats. It gives you kind of more of a feeling of connection to the water as well. Everything is all working with one. Your whole body has an effect on what the kayak is doing. The paddle strokes have an effect on what the kayak is doing. You feel all of that moving together at once.
All right, that's going to do it for our review video for the day. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave us a like and subscribe. If you've got any more questions about the Swell watercraft boats, be sure to leave them in the comments. I got to spend a reasonable amount of time in them, so I'm pretty comfortable answering some questions. And yeah, if you've got any other videos you'd like to see us put together, please leave them in the comments. We'll try to get to anything we can this year. We're always looking for new ideas, so we appreciate that. And yeah, thanks again for tuning in. Happy paddling.